What a great day. Whoa. Hello everyone, my name is Lisa and I'm the Viet vegan because I'm Vietnam vegan, and today I'm going to talk to you about my favorite sourdough bread recipe and the new methods that I have learned to bake, or basically all the knowledge that I have accumulated into one video of sourdough. If you don't know the nitty-gritties of sourdough, I highly recommend that you check out my first video and my blog post that details all of like the nitty-gritty of stuff for sourdough. It says for beginners, not because it's simple and easy to follow, but because I dive into the whys and the hows of what I've learned about sourdough. A lot of people have been baking bread. I have kept baking bread. I can't help it. Bread is just so fun. And I got a new bread slicer, so it makes eating this bread a lot easier. I'll have a video about whether or not this bread slicer is worth the space coming soon. I have sort of like refined and simplified my recipe for sourdough bread. For a really long time, I was like chasing this open crumb structure, and then I realized it's really difficult to eat and really not that fun if I get really like heartbroken every time I see that my crumb structure is not super lacy and open. I start out with either 350 grams of flour or 500 grams of flour. I mostly use these three flours: bread flour, spelt flour, and whole wheat flour. So for my 350 loaves, I usually do 250 grams of bread flour, 50 grams spelt, 50 grams whole wheat. Those have yielded my best loaves with the best crumb, the best oven rise, the best ears. Although when I baked the bread for this, I didn't get a very beautiful ear, but I got a really nice crumb. Oh, I meant to film that crumb, but then I gave the bread away, so it's gone now. But I have a picture of the crumb, so here's the picture. It is a pretty nice crumb. It is a tiny bit underproofed because it was cold in my house that day and I just didn't give it enough time, but it's fine. A couple of you have talked to me about bread a lot, and like ever since my other videos of bread, I've asked you to just send me pictures of your baked bread, which has been amazing because every now and then I'll get like a random DM of just a picture of bread, and it's awesome. Zero context sourdough bread. I love it. So I've been seeing so many of you experiment with different recipes, different flours. It's been really cool. And one of my patrons actually, gave me the hot tip of just skipping AUTOLYSE. What I used to do is I used to AUTOLYSE my flour with water like for a couple hours ahead of time. And now I just don't do that anymore. And my bread is better. I don't know how, but I'm not gonna question it. I just mix my starter and my water in the beginning, try to loosen up the starter. I actually don't even bother making a leaven anymore. I just feed my sourdough starter the night before with extra mixture so that it'll be like young leaven level by the time I'm awake in the morning. Typically what I'll do is it'll be like 1 a.m., midnight or 1 a.m. So I'll have 5 grams of starter in the jar. If I'm doing a 500 gram loaf, I'll do 50 grams flour, 50 grams water. And then I'll put that in like a coolish place because I want to like give it as much time as possible for me to sleep in and not wake up really early in the morning. If you plan on, sleeping at like a proper 8 hours and not like dilly-dallying and what have you, then you'll have a happy young leaven level starter in the morning, and you won't have a separate leaven. You won't have a separate like sourdough starter. It's all just one, and it's awesome. And I've reduced the amount of discard that I produce by doing that. And it's been a great time. I really prefer that over making like a young leaven. It's so fussy. Like why complicate things? Water, starter, mixy, and then I add the flours on top. If I weren't lazy, I would do the flours in a separate bowl, mix them until they're all evenly incorporated, then add it to the bowl. But I am lazy, so that's not happening. So I just dump everything in the bowl. I try to do like an initial mix with keeping the water in like the bottom half and then just like mixing the flours on top so it's like mostly incorporated. It works for me. And then you just use your hands to just really get everything in there. I highly recommend a dough scraper. I've used a spatula. It just doesn't do the same purpose, you know what I mean? Like it does the job, but it's just not as good. So I like to use a dough spatula to just like scrape down the sides, make sure nothing is dry or not incorporated into the dough. I usually let it rest for about 45 minutes to an hour, and that is like the makeshift AUTOLYSE sort of. So it gives time for the gluten to get hydrated, and it also gives the starter a little bit of time to wake up. I also discovered that I like lowering the hydration of my flour a little bit more. Again, stepping away from chasing that like super lacy high hydration dough. I just found the high hydration like too gummy, and I found that bringing it down to like 75% yields the perfect texture of dough for me personally. It's all personal preference. Then I really like it. If you can, use room temperature water. I make coffee every day, except for today for some reason. So normally I boil water every single day, and whatever I don't use in the kettle, I put into this freezable old yogurt tub bottle, whatever. You can use whatever you want. And then I just keep it up here. This is my coffee / starter station. So I have coffee, I have starter, flour mix, which is, oh, I guess I did change that too. So I now basically just use 40% bread flour, 40% rye, 10% whole wheat, and that's my starter food. I tried weaning my starter down to like less rye, but he just wasn't as happy. So I just kept it up as rye. I never bake with actual rye flour. I only use it for feeding it, and my starter is super happy. So you know what? It's fine. Where was I? My typical bulk rise, so the time that I add my leaven to the time that I put it in the fridge, is about 5 hours, especially when it's cold. My best loaf recently, I bulked for about 6 hours. So it depends on the temperature of your house. It depends on the temperature of the dough. Then I add the salt. A lot of people will mix salt and water and then add it in, and I wonder if I should do that instead. I lowered my hydration to 75%, and I'm wondering if I should do that, if I should add a little bit more water with salt to really incorporate it in. To be determined. I add the salt, mix it in, let it rest for half an hour, and then I do a set of 3 to 4 stretch and folds depending on the time. There have been times where I kind of forgot about it and left it for about an hour. That's fine. I mean, as long as you incorporate at least 3 stretch and folds, it's fine. But a lot of people have been doing like laminations, coil folds, blah, 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 blah. And I find that it doesn't really matter. I find that the stretch and fold is just fine and dandy. And I get a better idea of like understanding the dough when I can like move it and play around with it. I like to do about 3 to 4 folds. I've done up to 5. I think I've done 6 before, just because it was like really cold in my house. But after my final stretch and fold, I usually let it rest for about an hour just so that it can just, you know, chill out, wake up, do whatever it needs to do to do bread things. And then I do my pre-shape, which is the envelope fold. And then I do my final fold. One side, roll it up, and then stitch the ends together. And that has yielded really nice ears for me. I've seen people do more complicated things, but every time I do more than just that initial roll, I always break tension. So I just don't do it anymore. At this point, you can either just cover in rice flour, put in your banneton to rise a little bit longer until it passes the poke test. Lately, I've really enjoyed coating it in seeds. It just makes for a delicious time. So to coat the loaf in seeds, I like to just wet my hands and just like pat the dough until the whole surface is wet. You don't want it sopping wet, you just want it like lightly moist. If you have a decent mister spray thing, mine broke. I don't know why it's not working. It's from Muji, but it's like totally broken. And I have one that I use on my plants, but I didn't want to use it on my bread. You want to get the surface of the dough wet, and then you basically pick up the dough, flip it upside down, and then roll it in a plate of seeds. I plunk that into the banneton, and then I add the remaining seeds that are on the plate like around the edge of the banneton, just because as the dough will rise, that'll act as a barrier between the banneton and the dough, so it won't stick. Once it's in the banneton, I like to do this sort of stitching to increase the surface tension. That'll just give it more of a poof when it rises in the oven. And to do that, you just sort of like pull both sides, kind of like a zigzag position, and just kind of get them to stick to each other. It takes a little bit of practice and it's a little bit of time, but eventually you'll get it done. And then you'll add in the seeds, and then I like to do a final sort of stitch on top with the seeds. Then you do the poke test. The way I do the poke test is once I poke it, and if it fills back really quickly and bounces back, that means that it's not proofed enough. But if you poke it and it bounces back, it's a little bit slower and it leaves a bit of a dent, then you know that it's proofed. Actually in this, I feel like I should have waited a little bit longer for it to be a little bit slower in refilling and still leaving a dent. You know, you live and you learn. It was still decently proofed. It was just very slightly underproofed. I let that chill in the fridge for at least 12 hours. The next day, you're gonna preheat your oven for about 1 hour. So I usually wait until the beep beep mark on the oven to tell me that it's fully preheated, and then I wait another half hour. And that just gives the cast iron time to preheat. I got one comment asking about whether or not it's okay to preheat an empty cast iron with enameled sides or whatever. I've never read anything that tells me otherwise. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've been doing it for the past like 6 months, so I think it's fine. I do it all the time, so whatever. Because my oven is really hot on the bottom, I usually put a baking sheet underneath just to like catch the brunt of the heat, and so that the ambient heat is what bakes my bread and not just like the heat from the bottom of the pot, and that way I don't have a super burnt bottom. It's been a great time. So once it's preheated, then I like to flip my cold dough onto the parchment paper. If I have done the poke test properly, it'll be fermented like perfectly by now. I wouldn't recommend doing the poke test now because then you're just gonna deflate the dough. Flip it onto a parchment paper thing. I reuse my parchment paper like 3 or 4 times, basically until it shatters and falls apart, which is kind of where we're at today. And then I use a wire monkey bread lom on my dough. I tried for a while to just use a skewer with a safety blade attached to it, but the bread lom just makes a big difference. Whatever bread lom you get will be nice. I bought my friend one for Christmas that has like a little holder. It's by Bread Llama. It's really, really cute and really beautiful. And it, you know, if you want, I'll link that Etsy down below and you can get one for yourself. Wire Monkey is also a really good one. That's the one that I have. They don't deliver to Canada anymore. I don't know why. I tried to order her a Wire Monkey one over Christmas, but he didn't ship to Canada. So I was like, okay, fine. Honestly, I kind of wish that I bought the Bread Llama one because it's really beautiful and it has a holder, because now mine is just like a blade naked, just chilling out on my counter. I do a score. I've been doing some more intricate scores lately, but usually I just like to stick to the one big old score so you get a nice ear. When it's time to bake, I like to put it in right away, and then I close the lid almost all the way, and then I pour a little bit of water in. And then this gives it a little bit of extra steam. You totally don't have to do this, but this is what I like to do. You bake for 40 minutes total, 20 minutes at 500 with the lid on, 20 minutes off, bringing it down to 450. After that, you have delicious bread. I do let it cool for about 3 to 4 hours, but if you like warm, tasty bread, it is very good. It will be gummier if you do cut it too early, but if you're eating it all like right away, then like what does it matter? Anyway, that's how I make sourdough bread now. I basically eliminated all the fuss out of my sourdough bread routine. I've made it a lot more simple and a lot easier. So any of those who were intimidated by my first couple videos about baking bread, I'm sorry. Here is the updated version that is a lot more approachable, a lot more easy. And honestly, at the end of the day, even if you don't do everything completely right, you'll still have bread. It might not be the most perfect oven springy, nice crumb sort of bread, but it'll be a bread type thing that you can toast and eat and turn into croutons, worst case scenario. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and my updated sourdough bread technique, recipe, method. I've watched so many different sourdough recipes and like so many different methods, so many different ways of like adding different things, so many different flour things. At the end of the day, it's just bread. Let me know if you try this recipe. A bunch of you were asking me for my updated recipe, so that's why I'm doing this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have a delicious day. Bye.